Good evening. It's Wednesday, midweek already. For us Brits who had a public holiday at the beginning of the week, you know, frankly, it's a good thing. Now, one thing I do need to do before I start is I've got something going in my ear and it's a bit loud. So let me chunk down that a little bit. That's a bit much. There, that's not so bad. So, oh, I know what I forgot to do again. Goodness gracious me. Let's do that. So, let's update the title a little bit because we are going to be working today on a good old triangle. It's a day with the Y in the week. We are going to do some triangle. Now, one thing that is kind of rather obvious at this point in time is that my bobbins are a mess. Not quite sure how bobbins do this so well, but they do so love to end up in a big pile of goop. Now, some of this is because they need to be longer. And so let's move you all over there and start lengthening. Problem is I don't want them too much longer because then they'll go off the edge of the pillow and I'll have to shorten them the moment I actually want to use them. But I do need to lengthen them so that they can kind of go out the way. But never mind. So, it's looking a bit slim. There's a couple of slim looking ones. This doesn't look like it's going to make a whole square, but there we go. Makes it a bit easier to roll you around the corner. So let's continue on. Let's put you over there. You keep your dog head to yourself. Right. Let's make these longer because we will need you shortly. It's always hard at the beginning of the stream when I don't know if there are people out there. But at the same time, if you're watching it on YouTube, people sit there going, why didn't she talk much at the beginning? Well, it's because there's no one to talk to. Although I do a bit of an introduction, it kind of peters out because there's no one to talk to. Why does it always feel like there's a pin in the arm of my jumper? I love how my phone's just gone, ping, hey, some dude is streaming Path of Exile 2. Well, first of all, I'm already watching a stream, thanks. Secondly, I'm also streaming, so, well, I'm not watching, I'm listening to a stream. How much more can I do, Twitch? It's a bit like when you buy, like, you know, you've had to replace your TV because your TV died, right? So you ordered the biggest TV you could get, and, you know, you're kind of pleased with it. And for the next, like, year, all you get are adverts for TVs, and it's like, how many damn TVs do you think I need? Now, obviously, TVs, you can make use of more than one, but it'll be the same for things like, you know, hey, you've got a microwave. Do you want to, are you interested in this microwave? No, I've got one now. That looks way too many. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's probably why. Okay. I love listening to this guy. He streams. His name's Darth Microtransaction, and he is currently streaming about Path of Exile 2. And I love listening to him because he's got this cat, and the cat has had it. He tends to play hardcore characters, so when they die, that's it, you're done, right? And his cat has managed to kill him a few times, which I find amusing. If nothing else, because I am currently reading, well, audiobook reading, a book called Dungeon Crawler Carl. Now, this was put on to me by Sean, who is a loving robot here on Twitch, who is the lead guy for Monsters and Memories. And apparently I remind him of one of the characters, which... should I be insulted? I don't know. She's actually quite cool, but she's also a cat. And I'm not a cat. But I quite like, you know... There are worse things to be associated with, I assure you that. And it does make me smile. Anyway, Princess Donut, the cat, is clearly quite a thing. And then listening to Darth Microtransaction, whose cat has developed a few interesting behaviour quirks recently. So, Kitty, as we all know her, because although she's got a proper name, we only ever hear her called her Kitty. Kitty has, shall we say, well, she decided one day that she was hungry and that this guy hadn't fed her enough, or fed her the right stuff, so she walked onto his landing, because he streams from an upstairs bedroom, and peed on his backpack. I mean, normally animals are not known hugely for being vindictive. Not in the same way a human would, right? They can be defiant, they will do something anyway, but they are not normally vindictive. It is normally you said not to pee on your shoe, well, you left me, so I weren't here to tell me not to pee on your shoes, so I peed on your shoe, right? I have seen a dog be vindictive. I can't remember exactly why and what, but I remember saying no to one of my dog about something. She turned round, she walked to the end of my bed and peed on my foot. Through the duvet, so there's now a wet duvet, right? Which of course creates really unhappy humans because, well, we're not renowned for sleeping in wet bits, and I was sitting up at the time, so the feet were nearer the middle. Therefore, you know, later on, wet bit. So, you know, I have seen it, but it is not a common thing. Especially dogs. Dogs are just too happy for that kind of crap. Even a miserable dog's too happy for that kind of crap. Usually, as I said. But, you know, this picture... And he really liked this backpack. Now, apparently washing it is not something he's prepared to do. Because this backpack was one that he used to travel with. And the idea of washing it... he didn't feel would remove the smell enough, and so he's had to throw it away. Now, a few of us are kind of like, that seems excessive, you know, you could have washed it. You know, it would wash out the smell if you did it right, but he's ditched it and he's buying a new one. Now, he does have enough stream watchers to mean that he's kind of got more spare cash and can maybe afford to make that kind of decision. But all the same, it was kind of amusing that this cat had peed on his... Oh, you arse of a bobbin. Did you see that? I don't suppose you particularly saw that too well. This bobbin here has now gone really super long. I watched it. It just kind of went free fall off the edge. It just kind of made a bid for freedom. A bit like... not like a base jumper, but more like one of those guys who leap off the side of a building with the rope and just bounce down the side. It kind of was more like that. And I can't remember what that's called, so... but it was more like that. Here you go. Alright. Let's put you back over here again. Right. And another one's just done the same. So clearly that's going to be the in theme for the night. You're all going to go leaping off the edge. It's not bungee jumping, but it's kind of close. You're all going to get long just for the sake of it, aren't you? Maybe you're all just a little bit longer than you should be. So yes. I also don't know why, but I had to have a bit of a nap after work. And I've woken up and the very, very, very top of my head is really, saw, like I kind of, like someone clonked me over the head with a shovel, saw. And it's really tender. Don't know why. Don't know why that is. Yes, I need to wait for the usual degenerates to show up. I love them, really. I do love my usual friends who show up for the stream, even though this isn't their bag. I do love people who do that. Yay, Nautical! Nautical! Oh, I need to talk to you, my friend. As you know, because you are a good friend, for you have followed my journey most intently, and you pay attention, like a really nice person does. I set upon a quest to work out how to join two pieces of lace together invisibly. And, well, I have succeeded. But the insanity cost has been too much. Oh, I also meant to point out, remember I whined about the fact that I bought those bags and the heart was falling off? I sewed it on, look. Nice bit of blanket stitch around the edge, now it's all skill. So, I've also been posting my idea, my pictures and a bit of text about what I've been doing in the beginner's lace group. Because I still class myself a beginner to a large extent. And even though I posted my strip and the snakes and I'm a snake and then the join strips and close up it really doesn't show, but the further away you get, the more bold it looks, all of that kind of stuff. Then I also posted my two rather feeble little squares that I was going to join. After asking about, can you do spiders in it, i.e. do I have to reinvent the whole wheel, or can I kind of keep the same pattern, but, make it slightly differently. And there's a guy on there. Now, he is the guy who did Flanders, right? He is the guy who did the Flanders lace and made it look so easy. And he did admit that it was not as easy as it looked. And he did do the lassen thing, which is kind of what I did for the middle, sort of, but not quite. Anyway, because with lassen you overshoot a lot more. So if this square triangle, so let's say I'd done the whole square with lassen, I would work almost like another inch over the top, and so I'd duplicate an inch and then join the two together, which, as we know, makes it look fat. But it depends what you're doing with it. If it's a tablecloth or it's a join on a bit of clothing, there's a chance that you can hide it, right? being a net curtain and wanting light to go through it, anyway, I did tell them that I solved the puzzle. Because I have solved the puzzle. It just fell apart part way through. So I know it works. I've just not currently got a physical proof. And I never got round to sewing up the other side once I glued it. I kind of, because, I'd solved it, but already lost some sanity points and really didn't fancy, chipping away more at my feeble sanity to prove, in a photograph that I'd sorted it out. And I hope, slightly tongue-in-cheek, one person posted, "Where's the video?" You're just rude, right? What makes you think that I am, A, capable of making awesome videos about it, but B, it's, this is a beginner group. I'm a beginner. So yes, I've worked it out, but I've done it once, right? And it fell apart. Demanding a video, because it wasn't like, "Oh, well done, are you going to make a video?" It was just video, ? Well, no. So I wrote and I explained to them that, I do kind of sew 2 inches from my nose, so making a video of me actually doing it is really difficult. But, I hope to And then this guy posts, "So you're going to keep it to yourself?" Well, no. Not necessarily. That was not my plan. Anyone who's come along here knows I have explained, as much as I am capable, how I did it. But demonstrating it, putting it on paper, making a video, to all of those of you who've tried to make an instructional video in your time, you know that it's a lot harder than just doing it on video. You can't just do it and then kind of go, "Look, here's a picture of me doing it." Because you kind of need to show the prep work. You need to show, a close-up angle of you doing it. And if I sew 2 inches from my nose, I can't show you that. And it's very difficult to do a lot of things flat on a surface. So, for example, you can't necessarily knit with it on flat on a table. You have to hold it, then you have to have a camera that can look at it from your point of view, and a lot of these things become more complicated. And so some things like this, demonstrating how to do lace isn't so hard, because you've got a camera, you can have it directly over top, and I can have you zoomed in on this little bit, and, or whatever, or have a zoomed in bit in the corner, which I had thought of doing a couple of times. But have a zoomed in bit so you can see kind of what the bobbins are doing and what the thread's doing and where the pin's going. Use some slightly bigger thread like I did yesterday, but not quite that far apart. And, do it so that it's a slightly bigger scale, and you can make a video about pretty much anything. But sewing something, unless you're shoving it through a sewing machine, it's really hard to demonstrate sewing. Now, the cross-stitch people can do it because they put it on, and embroiderers and stuff or tapestry who use a hoop on a stand kind of thing, can do it because they can kind of angle a camera over the hoop and work on the hoop as they would normally while the camera does its thing. But I can't really work like that. As I said, I've got to have it like 2 inches from my nose. Well, means I can't really do that. And so for me to entirely video and document maybe, video, no, not at all. So it's not that I want to gatekeep it, because as you know, angry at woman on YouTube who did just that. So it's not that I want to gatekeep it. The problem is, I don't necessarily have the skills to do a good enough job to properly explain it to somebody else. Especially maybe someone who is more of a beginner than me, and so will struggle, you know, in the simpler stages, let alone the rest of it. Now, and if I could animate, if I could draw, well, I could draw some of it. That would be great. But I suck, so I can't. So, you know, all of the ways that would be good for putting this down for others to understand, well, are beginning to fall apart and are proving to be something that I am not able to use as my demonstration method. So I do struggle with the fact that it's not that I want to gatekeep it, it's that I'm not very good at explaining it. Well, what can I smell? I can smell something and it's like burning. But sweet and nice. So it's more like a candle, but I haven't got any candles on. Whatever. My fire alarm's not going off, so whatever it is can't be important, right? Because it does go off, I know that. For I have inadvertently managed it while cooking, you know. And recently, more to the point, so I know that it's still good, you know. So it's not that I want to gatekeep it, it's I don't know how to explain it to somebody else. It's a bit like walking. You know, you can say, well, you put one foot in front of the other and, you know, off you go. But there's more to it than that. Not a lot. But it's those nuances that kind of make it work, right? So yes, it's not that I want to gatekeep it, it's just that I don't know how to share it either. But it did make me laugh that, in a way, well, and that's the thing. If, you know, you and I are not inventing something that has never been before done, right? We are doing something that other people have done already. And, you know, if other people didn't mention it and no one else has kind of gone, hey, when I do this, this isn't working because, well, then surely everyone else is working it out too. And that I've had this problem a bit at work. So, for example, you know, you don't get sent on a training course, you have to work something out. Okay? So now you do something, you've solved a thing, and that should it come up, you do it every time. Oh, we need you to document it so that everyone else knows how to do it. Well, why? You didn't make anyone else document it so I knew how to do it. There is a bit of kind of... There is a little... Yes, yours are, but you know what I mean, in the sense of, if you were doing, like with your synth, you were cleaning it up, someone else will have done that. So it's not like you've invented a whole new thing, right? And if they didn't mention it, well, kind of, there is a bit of you that kind of goes, well, clearly I don't need to, because no one else has moaned that this didn't work. And as I said, when I'm at work and I've had to work something out, I do sometimes feel very resentful when I've had to work it out. I've had to start from scratch. I've had to, with no training, and it's not my bag, but I've still had to work it out. And then suddenly, like, the guy whose job this shit is goes, "Oh, I need you to document for me." Well, why? It's your job. Surely you knew this. And I can feel a little resentful about it. I'm not going to lie. Because why is it okay for me to have to work it out, but not anybody else? Again, it's why has Liz got to be different? Why is it okay to expect Liz to work it out, but not expect anyone else to? Now, I know that that's not necessarily the right way of thinking, but it is still so you expected me to work it out, but you don't expect anyone else to. Well, that's nice of you. Where's that when it comes to my review? Where's the Liz solves everything? So, as I say, I realise that this is not the right attitude. And I inevitably do document it. But I still feel... Well, and that's it. It's when the penny drops as to how they did it, and you have a go, and it works, right? You are not inventing something new. You are rediscovering that which was, like how they built the pyramids, right? Because although there are many theories as to how they built the pyramids, some of them are a little bit daft. And even though you had, thousands of slaves, practicalities state that you can't really have 5,000 slaves all dragging a little stone to get it to the top of the pyramid, and that the slope you would have needed to have would have been, I think they worked out it was like 500 miles long or something. It's just clearly not how they did it. But they haven't worked out how exactly they did it. So it's kind of lost, but at the same time, they've got ideas on how it could be done. And as we know, sometimes you try it and it doesn't work, and well, that's a mess and that's stupid. And I know that what I worked out works. Now, with a lot of forethought and some practice and some stuff, it would be more feasible. And the reason it would be more feasible is that you would leave really long tails top and bottom. You would then use those tails because obviously normally it was done with shawls, so you would want a solid edge to your shawl. Therefore, to join the two bits of solid edge for your strips, you would have to do that, in a slightly more different and solider manner. So you use the end of the threads to do that first. So you do the top and the bottom first. You then use a second thread that you hide in the solid bit to do your snaking up and down to join the two together in your invisible manner. This gives you the advantage that top and bottom are holding it roughly together, but also that the threads you're going to be joining together, which previously would have been held by sheer willpower, are now held together firmly because, they're tied in at both ends. Now, you have to do it very carefully because it is very easy to pull it out of shape because, once again, there is nothing holding it where it should be. So it's, it's not an easy job, and I do understand then why, the lady whose job it was to do this was a specialist because, sanity points, you've really got to have someone with so much patience doing that. Clearly not me, right? Secondly, it is a very slow, delicate job that, if you needed to make a bedspread, a large shawl, a tablecloth, a insert whatever of bigness, then it's going to have people making the strips You know, so let's say you have 4 people making strips and 2 doing the joining. Now, obviously, roughly for every strip, you need a join. But maybe you end up with 4 joiners and 2 strip makers, because the strip makers can make it quicker than the joiners can join it. But it would be something that, you know, it was a collection of women who made these things. It was very rarely a sole individual. And part of that was because, you know, maybe the lady who did the joining couldn't even do lace making. She'd never tried. Maybe she was too busy joining it together that she never got a chance to be a lace maker. Who knows, right? And the fact that it's not lost in time, but it is not mentioned in books. It is not covered anywhere. There are no videos about it. I mean, there's videos showing that it happened. So, you know, there is a lace making museum and they've got pieces where this was done. But you don't get a good look at them. You don't get that kind of to stare at it really closely to see if you can see where the joins were or anything and look for telltale signs at the edges or whatever, right? You just get to see an overall beautiful thing and go, wow, that's pretty and delicate and holy crap, that's a lot of tiny stitches, you know. And that's kind of it. And, well, that's all well and good. But for the rest of us, who maybe can't afford to go visiting some obscure museum in a faraway country, we can't see that. We can't get the detail that we would need to even remotely do it. And because Miss Annoying Lady on YouTube bangs on about how she went there and, you know, all of this kind of stuff, but then doesn't even show something she's done with it, it's not even like there's a small bit. I mean, as I'm making lace and talking to you, if I used a clip of this, there is at least me flicking bobbins in the background that you can go, what did she quite do there? And watch it a couple times and go, looks like she does this. Let me try that, right? And give you some hints. No. There is literally nothing. And as you know, I really hate people who gatekeep for the sake of it. Now, as I said, this doesn't feel right. I've missed one somewhere, surely. Hang on. How has this not worked out? I screwed up back there, that's why. As I said, I resent sometimes the expectation that Liz will work it out and document it for everyone else at work. But I still do. And I think that is, in my mind, some of the difference. Is that, you know, if I can work it out, I'm sure others can. So I don't feel necessarily responsible for writing it down. Because, well, you could if you tried. Yeah. So, you know, if you put your brain to it, I'm sure they could work it out. As I say, it kind of came to me in a dream because my brain was thinking about it and trying to work out how I'd end up with a single thread at the edge. And then my brain went, well, it's obvious, you frigging donut. You do this. And my brain went, yeah, I'll do it. And that was the end of that. And that was the missing link in my process, right? And so if I can think of that, I can't be the only one who'd think of that, surely, right? It's not like, say, a complicated knot. It's just a case of, well, if you want a simple thread at the edge, you have a simple thread at the edge. Oh yeah, I guess that would work. And that was kind of the whole thought process. So, from that point of view, there is a little bit of me that's kind of angry that it's almost like, well, we want it, but we aren't going to put any thought and try into it. It's not like there's a whole group of people who've been trying to work this out for months, and I'm the first person to work it out. It's not like we've been sitting here talking about it for 3 months, And, you know, there's 20 of us all, you know, frantically making chunks of lace and sitting here with pins and needles and thread and trying to make it work, right? No. Not one of them has even mentioned wanting to join multiple pieces of lace together. So what, now I've done it, you want in? Well, now I've done all the work, you mean? You want to free ride my efforts and insanity? Well, thanks, you know. I lost sanity points doing this. I guess it's a little like the snakes. I didn't discover the snakes. Oh, I can't claim I invented the snakes. But they're kind of acting like I did. But also, I'm not necessarily getting full credit for the snakes. And there's a little bit that goes, so I worked this out. You were really pleased, and I can tell you now that the lady, and this is not a dig at her, so, you know, don't get me wrong. The lady who holds this kind of online Bible for beginner lace makers, she put the snakes in the spider section and has now made a couple of patterns for people to make using the snakes. My name does not appear once on that Bible. And so a little bit of me feels slightly put out because, well, you know, she's not making money off it. So, you know, I don't feel too put out, don't get me wrong. It's not like she's charging money and, you know. But at the same time, once I'd said it, you could have tried. You know, she's managed to make 2 bookmarks with snakes on, so she could have tried, because she obviously can make lace fairly fast. You know? Yeah, like I said to you earlier, Naughty Cat, if someone says to me as a one-to-one, hey, that's really cool. Oh, thanks for that. The moment it's public, die of shame. But at the same time, I'm angry when no one does. Now, they've died of shame and embarrassment if they had. But the fact that they didn't, I'm angry. And I know you understand this conflict, right? I know you understand how... You know, but that was my thing. How dare you know? How dare you act like you invented this? You know. But at the same time, if you mention me, I'm going to die. So yeah, can't win. But I am resounding the fact that I am going to make this square and one more after it, and we are going to make strips. And we are going to make a neck curtain out of strips. I have here they are kind of squival shaped curtain rails of extra thinness, designed very much for neck curtains, that you stick to your window. And so I can mount my half neck curtain on my window. I bought it to encourage me to keep going. Yeah, so it's all ready. Yeah, I've also got a really sore bit on my head, and I'm not sure why. It almost feels like it should be a bloody mess up there, like I took half my head off, but I had a snooze. So, that was like a couple of hours ago, you know. Yeah, I get that. I mean, The only reason I posted that I'd worked out how to do it was because I'd been asking. And so it was kind of to close off I've been asking about this, I've been asking questions about this, and I wanted to let you know that I have worked out how to do it. But it's not worth it, right? Was pretty much the entire post. And I do, as I say, I feel kind of angry that they almost feel it, because none of them offered any advice or ideas. I do feel slightly angry that they feel entitled to my answers, because no one was helpful. Not one. I do wish it could be done with this, though. I do wish that it could be a torsion style. And still achieve the utterly invisible join. She says, thinking about it. So, let me give you an idea. Let me undo this pin here. Right. Let's ignore this pair for a minute. So, in my current method of doing it, I just wrap around the pin to give it an extra loop, right? Actually, I need to take this pin out as well. Hang on. Yeah, I possibly need to ditch this pair as well. Hang on. So let's do that. Because we can. Right. So let's pretend you are gone. So this pair would come out to a pin. No. This thinking about this. No. This is why it doesn't work, because there are two. So put you down. So what you would have to do is kind of like cross, pin, and then I need another pin. Give me another pin. Put another pin in like this sort of thing. And then this can cross, right? Hopefully, somebody. So you end up with a single thing, and then you come back in and you cross, and then you go back and do your working. So I need to do more tests, but there is possibly a way to do it, but it still kind of has the same single strand disaster and sanity losing points of before. No, hang on, I gotta get this right, because I need to do see now my brain's confused, because you're coming out of there, but you shouldn't have two pairs. That's because you are not holding what I think you are. Alright, there we go. You need to go in there like that. Now, one obvious way to do it would be to tie three pair, not a pair of bobbins, but three bobbins together at the top, so that one of them is not floating around like, like a floaty thing. And that would hold down the thread. This is true. This is true. You can offload your babysitting skills and my rantings onto Flutenby. Poor Flutenby. Flutenby's going, I've volunteered for frigging what now? Yeah. So Flutenby, the subject of today's rants are based thereupon the fact that I finally worked out how to do the invisible join, but the sanity cost is too high, so we're not going to do it. And that having been asking about it in the beginner's lace group, I posted that I've worked it out, but I'm not going to do it. One person posts video ? Well, you could come and look through my stream and where I discuss how I do it. Because I make some on stream and show you how I make it. And explain a little bit of how I tried to put it together. So you're welcome to go through that if you would like, if you're actually interested. But no, I was not planning on making an instructional video on it. Because, well, I sew 2 inches from my nose and I can't video that. And someone else then posted, so you basically, so you're going to keep it to yourself. It's not what I said either. I just pointed out that I can't. As well as, if you were that interested, how come you've not been trying to work it out? And so I feel slightly... Now, as you know, I have a real issue with gatekeeping. But at the same time, I don't feel I'm the right person to make an instructional video. For yes, I have worked out how to do it. It's a bit like doing a handstand. I can tell you how to do a handstand. What I can't do is teach you exactly how it feels when you achieve the balance and therefore can hold it. Because you need to feel that. It's like riding the clutch. You can explain how it all works, but it doesn't necessarily make it work the moment you come to do it. It's not like maths. 1 + 1 is 2. It is a fact. This is a, it's right, low-flying aircraft. But there is... it is fairly factual, but due to, the fact that you've got to sew it together, so it's not all on a flat thing, because obviously this is a flat thing. I can show you a lot here, but like knitting, as you know, if someone said to you, you need to knit with both your needles flat on a table, that's really hard. It's almost not possible. So then you need to have a camera that you can almost have sitting on your, kind of on your chest or on your forehead like a miner's lamp, so that it can capture what you see. But again, that's still not that easy, because if you try and do it with a camera in front of you, well, now you can't see round the camera, and you can't really do it through the camera, and it makes it really difficult. And so making a tutorial video in that sense is really... making a tutorial video for the actual lace making, that is easy enough. Because you can zoom in, you can talk about it, you can have a zoomed out picture of what the bobbins are and maybe flip between the two. So sometimes you've got the close up on here and sometimes you've got the full video with a zoomed in bit in the corner, and you can do all of that. But you can't do that for when you're, you've got your nose on the lace and you're sewing it with a really small needle. It just doesn't work. And as we know from a week ago when I tried to explain it, Liz trying to explain it also incurs sanity point loss. And It's not that I don't know what I mean. I just don't know how to describe it. I can't demonstrate it. I mean, I tried really hard to demonstrate it in a way using things flat on my pillow, and it didn't work out. So how can I explain it to these people? Now, I don't know necessarily all of their levels of understanding. Now, one of them is the guy who did the Flanders thing, which, as you know, I tried, I hated, right? And he is clearly not a stupid boy, but at the same time, well, some of them can't even, barely been able to wind a bobbin. They're not going to understand it. I mean, they can like everything, you can see it being done and go, yeah, that makes some sense. But the moment you try and do it, a bit like I have brain farts, your brain might almost certainly fart and go, no, sorry, no, not get. Actually, I know that when, it's a bit like when you put your fingers like this and you do the wiggly wiggly thing. If you do it slightly wrong, it doesn't work. And your brain's going, don't get it. It took me a long time to do that as a child, believe me. But it's, same with doing a plait on your hair, on the French plait on your own hair. Doing it on someone else is so much easier than doing it on your own because, well, you can't see your own. And it takes a while and your arms get tired and I did have a lovely question from one of my friends who, she's a late transitioner, right? And I remember her asking me, how do you do it? And I went, what do you mean? She goes, well, you always used to spend hours fiddling with your hair and you used to do like French plaits. And I went, yeah. And she goes, how do you do it? And she said, because pretty much by the time I put my hair in a ponytail, my arms are tired. I said, you have to get used to it. You have to build up the tolerance to lack of blood in your arms while you do it. And with a French plait, you can't really put it down and pick it up later. So you have to be able to go from start to finish. And if your hair's long, well, it takes a frigging long time. So you build up to it. And she was really appreciative and the rest of it. But not everyone is a teacher. Because it does take a certain skill to be able to teach something in a understandable and interesting manner to somebody else. Because you can bet your ass that the person who posted video ? Even if I'd said yes and posted a link, they wouldn't have said thank you. They'd have probably gone, I don't get it. Well, that's fine, but you demanded a video. Here is a video. Well, it makes sense to me. Now, I do kind of want to try and document it, because I do think that, should you have sufficient sanity points spare, and you want to do it, go ahead, fill your boots. And maybe you'll make an improvement on it, but you'd never tell me. And, but at the same time, it's not, I asked lots of people, I don't know how many people are in that group, actually. Hang on. Let me go see how many people are in the group. Now, bear in mind, some of them are beginners, but some of them have been people who've been doing lace for like 60 years, right? These are not necessarily hang on. There are nearly 12,000 people in that group that I asked. And so, as I say, some of them have been making lace for 60 years and been teaching it for like 50, right? Not one of them helped me. So I don't actually feel overly required to tell them how I did it, because it's not like they helped. It's not like it was a group effort. It's not like 12,000 people all sat there going, oh, that's a really good idea. And well, I know, even 20 of them didn't sit down with me going, well, how can we do this? Well, I've had this idea. Oh, actually, I see that. But maybe if we did this, there was none of that. Absolutely none of that. It's almost like, oh, good, Lizzie's on it. She'll tell us when she's done. I've been making lace, realistically, kind of since August last year, I'm a beginner. So I should be asking more questions than answering, realistically. So I do feel slightly irked that there is this almost resentment that I found the answer. Or found an answer, at least. But I do feel slightly put out that they're being, well, a bit like many crafty groups. You know, when they can get something for free, they're all over it. But the moment they have to do any effort, oh, no, I'm not interested in that. You know? It's kind of how it feels, you know? And I may be doing them a disservice, because, you know, maybe someone's thinking, well, I dismissed doing something because I wouldn't be able to join it, because I had zero ideas how to do it. You're saying you found an answer, and I was hoping you'd share so I could, you know, maybe go about making this thing that I was interested in. You know, some baby's christening shawl or whatever it is, right? But literally to have video, question mark. I'm sorry, am I your mother? I hope your mother would slap you if she did that. Mine would have done. Christ, mine would have... maybe that's what's wrong with the top of my head. My brain was going, Mother, make me a video. Whack! Maybe that's where it came from. Some ghost has come along and smacked me on the head. Because it really is really tender. And I don't get it. It's a smallish spot. It's about... It's not a spot, but it's an area almost the size of this. That it's about that much. The top of my head is really painful. So if I like touch the top of my head, it really hurts. It knows what's wrong with it. It's like all the hair's been ripped out, yet it hasn't. It's definitely still there. But that's what it kind of feels like. It feels like... Hello! Yay, it's like a bear. Yay. I don't know what I did to my head, actually. I had a nap and I woke up with it. It may have been sore before, but I didn't notice. But not deliberately. I'm not aware of doing... I mean, I had a nap and I woke up... Unless I did it somehow before my nap. But I don't remember doing it. I don't remember doing anything that would have offended it other than having a nap. And I don't see how having a nap would offend it. But basically, it really feels... You know when you've had like one of those really sticky blastoplasts on and you've just ripped it off? If I touch it, it's as sore as when you've just ripped off a few layers of skin pulling off a band-aid, right? That's the kind of... It's really tender. There's no blood. There's no hair missing. Yeah, it's distinctly unpleasant. And it doesn't hurt when you're not touching it. But for some reason, part of the reason I don't wear makeup is because I seem to spend my entire day touching my head and face. In fact, that's all I seem to do all day. Clean my glasses, touch my face, fiddle with my head. I don't quite know why, but, you know, the moment there's, you know, if I've got any makeup on or there's something wrong with my face, so it's dry or it's greasy or it's, you know, or I've got makeup on it, I end up smearing it around my face and ending up worse than a Picasso, right? Hence I can't wear makeup because, you know, it just doesn't tolerate this kind of thing. Now, are you hooped over a pin? I think you are. Yes, you are. So, I don't know quite how, what I did, but whatever it is, it's annoyed. Some of it is probably age, you know, a bit of me's decided I'm bored, I'll hurt now, you know. But generally, I do wonder if part of it is me ranting. It is my frustrations coming out as a sore spot somewhere. Well, the older we get, the more they do that, that's for sure. It's the same as, you know, you get up in the morning and your knee gives way and goes, not today. And you're like, but I went to bed and you were fine. Well, I've decided to change my mind. And you know, and that's it. You now walk like a, you know, some form of leper and you know, zombie with, you know, dragging one leg behind you for the rest of the day. And everyone's looking at you, what did you do to your leg? No idea. Yeah. It's either that or the dog trodden on it, scratched it. But I don't... The top of my head is difficult to get to, even when I had a nap on the couch, because it hangs over the top of... You know, it's at the top of... out the way. Yeah, my back is prone to grief. I have literally walked around bent double because I can't stand up straight because my back's decided not today. Usually at a really inopportune moment. Ouch. My dad had a genetic bone disorder that... Now, this is... Right, let me explain why there are some good reasons I may not be my parents' daughter, okay? Now, none of them are definitive on their own, okay? So statistically, there is a really small chance that I am my parents' daughter, for it is statistically possible. How it is highly improbable, in the sense that my dad's blood type was O positive, my mother was AB negative. Normally, positive wins, and normally O wins. Now, this is not always true. Otherwise, we'd all be O positive by now. But I am A negative. This normally causes a lot of complications during birth. My mother didn't have any. Not those kind of complications, anyway. No, my mother just told me how I killed my sibling for the most of my life. Oh, I probably never mentioned that one. I was a twin. And the other one died in the womb in the early stages of development. And so my mother kept telling me throughout the whole of my life how I killed my sibling. I did tell you she was evil, right? Anyway. So I'm just trying to push some of these down. As I said, my mother's evil, right? You know, my mother was evil, so, you know, that was the way she goes. But then you have to take into account the fact that my mother and my mother's mother Obviously, my grandmother, but I never met her, so it's hard to think of her as grandmother because, well, I was never alive when she was. She died when my mother was barely a teenager. I think one of them died when she was 11. One of her parents died when she was 11. The other died when she was 13. I don't remember which way round it was. So realistically, it was a real long time ago, long before I was even remotely, a glint in anybody's eye, right? So, a woman I have no information on particularly, and my mother, had misshapen wounds that were not supposed to have children. Yet, my mother's mother had 2 children. My mother and apparently a sister, who no one in the family ever met. And when the woman died, my mother refused any of us to drive her up there. But there was also conflicting information. So, my mother's sister, my mother said, was a vegetable, to use the vernacular of the day. She was supposed to be blind, mute and deaf. Okay, so she really was and that she was almost on life support. Okay, so she kind of really is, dead to the world, except she's still breathing, give or take a bit. And then in another story, she would swear at you because, hang on, you said she was deaf and mute and blind. Well, how would she know to swear at you? How would she have picked up swearing? This didn't really fit together. So I'm guessing that there were a lot of lies in that direction. One that I will never have answers to, because of course she's dead now. So my mother's mother had one child who may or may not have been really, unfortunately, not good. And then the evil that is my mother. So my mother didn't think she could get pregnant and became pregnant with the twins, me and whatever the other one was. And obviously one died, which would be fairly, likely, given that she was not expected to be able to take any babies to term. But obviously I persisted. I was a breech birth. I came out, not feet first, because that's too simple. I came out butt first, in the most painful way humanly imaginable. And I was 6 weeks premature, and there was no cesarean. So that was going to hurt, right? I'm not going to pretend that was going to be an easy birth. That's got to have been bad. But at the same time, there are lots of stories you hear about women who have tearing and the like during childbirth. My mother never regaled those stories. She regaled plenty of other stories and of a very personal nature. So, really, are you sure? Anyway, I do not have my mother's genetic abnormality. Okay, the fact that her mother had it and she had it, I mean, clearly they all happened, so, okay. Maybe it skipped me, that's fine. But then my dad's side have a number of genetic small abnormalities. My dad had extra bones in his back and other issues. I didn't get any of them either. Now, it is true when you amalgamate families of, say, animals, a lot of the problems can wear away because the bad in one is overridden by the good in another. But when you also add to it the blood issues, and then you add to it the fact that I have horrendous eyesight, everyone else in the family's got great eyesight. No one else in the family wears frigging milk bottom glasses, not one. And while eyesight is not absolutely, hereditary, if you are born into, if both your parents have long sight, you tend to be long-sighted. My mother was long-sighted marginally. My dad claimed that he couldn't see shit without his glasses. If my glasses were out by as much as my dad's prescription, or in fact, most of you, if you had glasses that were out but if you put on my dad's glasses, you almost wouldn't have seen the difference. He literally had the smallest prescription humanly possible. He was minus 0.25. This is, frankly, not worth it. So, why is it then I'm minus 6.5? Where did that come from? You know, I'm more than halfway to being legally blind, right? And yet, no one in our family has terrible eyesight. Everyone in my family can draw. I can play music. No one in my family is musical. Now again, it's not hereditary, but traits and tendencies do seem to be, in part, hereditary. So, am I truly my mother's daughter? Or even my father's daughter? The milkman maybe comes to mind. Because, well, as it turns out, my mother was a raving tart. My mother slept with everything that didn't sit. You know, my mother slept with everything that wasn't nailed down. Well, you know, given that she was a housewife, I was, you know, maybe the postman, you know, something along those lines. You know, someone who came to fix the washing machine. Who knows? Maybe she did them all, frankly. I should have known my mother was a slapper. For one of the early conversations I remember my mother, I obviously asked my mother, so how did you end up marrying my dad? You know, of all the people in the universe, you know, how did you end up marrying my dad? And in her own words, she had 5 marriage proposals in 2 weeks. Now, bear in mind, this would have been in, like, 1960. So, okay, things were a little bit more, shall we call it, free and easy. But to have 5 marriage proposals, you've kind of got to be dangling them all, right? You know, most people offering marriage are not the guy you met 10 minutes ago, right? You've usually been doing the do, well, even if not doing the do, but you've been at least going out with them and doing, you know, being seen with them and, you know, a good few times before a marriage proposal is in offer. And I don't come from a society where arranged marriages and all the rest of it are a thing. And as my mother's parents were no more, and there has never been any mention of people who took care of her, you know, it's not like they would have necessarily had anything to do with it. So you understand my plight, is that for a woman who had 5 marriage proposals in a couple of weeks, she clearly was free love, man. You know, a tradition she went back to later in her life. Shall we call it? Trying to bring back the 60s. At my father's expense, too. So, you know, with that in mind again, maybe the whole, you know, whose I am, maybe she never really gave up on the free love, man. Maybe she never gave up on that, you know. I mean, as I said, Neck Kisser, my friend, how are you doing? That sums up a lot, my dude. That sums up a lot. We're also having audits at work. And I made a bit of a snarky comment about it today, because without telling you the exact audit that we're doing, but like all audits, they want to make sure you're following process and, you know, spot checking and, you know, doing all that kind of stuff. And this audit is kind of underway, but at the same time, if it's not actually underway right now, we're about to have it. So we know that this audit is coming, okay? And every year, it's a bit like doing your taxes, right? You should be keeping notes throughout the year so that when it comes to the end of the year, you pull out your kind of ledger and go, right, well, I spent so much on this, I spent so much on that, I've got this income here, or whatever your taxes require you to keep notes of. You copy it onto the magic form, you spend 5 minutes on it, you hand it in, job's again. But very few people do. At the end of the year, it's like, well, how much did you earn? I don't know. Got to add it up. So you go and try and find all the, you know, your pay slips and, you know, all the other things. And if you've got, you know, if you rent out a house, well, that rent counts as income. So you've got to go and make notes of that. And then, you know, if you are a landlord, well, then you've got expenses and, well, our particular audit is actually more about security. It is about promising to keep everything above board, ship shape, patched, you know, secure, minimal access, all of those kind of things. Because bear in mind, I work on servers for a living, right? But the principle is, now, for those who are not British, in the UK, we have a thing called an MOT, and the MOT is a test that your car must pass to prove that it is roadworthy. Now, the truth of the MOT certificate is that it is only guaranteed to be absolutely true at the exact moment of certification. And depending on where you go, well, maybe not even then. But the principle is that at the time of test, your car was roadworthy to the current standards. Fair enough. Now, obviously, you could crash the car, pull it out of the MOT station, turn it into a little mangled cube. It's clearly no longer roadworthy, but you've still got a valid certificate. But that doesn't mean your car is still valid. But the principle behind your MOT is that it is your duty to keep your car roadworthy. And these audits are basically on the same deal, is that here are a bunch of rules. You must patch, you must do this, you must do that. And you should have processes to follow to get exceptions, and processes to follow to get access, and processes to follow to get this, which we do. But the moment it comes to audit time, and they find a box that may be, oh, this is out of date, oh, you don't have to do change control now. Oh, no, cover it up. You know, I will say that, you know, one year we had, so the people who come in to do the spot checks pick some random servers off a list, right? And then we have to, or somebody has to provide them information to show the status of, you know, what's there and how it got there and all of these kind of things, right? And because they decided to do the test between patching cycles, so, you know, like most people, we patch every so often, there were a couple of outstanding patches. And I got a mail from my boss, you need to patch these 2 servers. Well, the whole point of the audit is that all of your servers, not just the ones they're looking at, it's a bit like sweeping. Are they being daft? What are they doing, neck kisser? Yeah. I must admit, I work a 37-hour week. So, you working a 35-hour week does not seem abnormal to me. But if you normally work, say, a 24-hour week, I can understand why that kind of grates, because you're sitting there going, well, I've based my life around, working less. I obviously have set hours. I don't do shifts, thank fuck for that. I am too old and grouchy to do shifts ever again. Okay, so you normally do a 30-hour week, give or take a few extra, right? So I work nearly a whole day extra compared to you. Anyway, I do sympathise though, because for example, I know that this coming weekend, I think it is, they're going to do some weekend work. Now, no one's asked me if I'm going to do it or not. I know they will wait till tomorrow afternoon. And bear in mind, I only work a 5-hour Friday. They will wait till tomorrow afternoon, probably about 3 o'clock, and go, Liz, are you available to do the work at the weekend? Yeah, that would screw it up. Working twice a day is harsh. But as you say, it seems a little rum that everyone else has only got 3 shifts and you've got 5. Okay. At least you get the weekend off, I guess. I mean, I used to do shift work. I've done shift work a few times. Can't claim I liked it. I mean, yeah. It's, as you say, it seems a little unfair if you've got 5 and everyone else has 3. I can understand that maybe a couple of you have 4 to make up for someone on holiday, whatever, right? Because not everything divides equally, after all. But if you've got 5, everyone else should have 4 to make that fair. You may be the first person who inadvertently ended up with a 5th one, but everyone else should then have 4. You shouldn't have you having way more than anyone else. That doesn't seem entirely reasonable. And I would feel singled out by that. Now, rightly or wrongly, I would feel singled out from that. And clearly you are irked by it, so maybe you do too. It is, I mean, maybe, but as long as you get paid extra, I suppose that's always a bit of a, maybe not so bad. But at the same time, if they didn't ask if you minded doing the extra hours, if they didn't ask, is it okay? I mean, it could be that you had plans for the rest of those hours. I mean, I've worked shift patterns where you kind of... Okay, so at least you would be paid extra. But pay is not everything. I mean, it helps, but it's not everything. And this is something that... There's quite a few things to do with jobs that I think a lot of people misunderstand. No one likes giving their time away for nothing, right? So, if your boss says, can you stay late today, but no, we're not paying overtime, yeah, actually, I do mind. Because if I want tomorrow afternoon off and I don't have any spare paid vacation time, well, you'll be pissy about that. But you feel free to take time out of my time is fine. No, it's not. It's no more fine for me to take mine than it is for me. For you to take mine than it is for I to take yours, right? I'm sorry, I will die on that hill. Now, my current employer do offer paid overtime, time off in lieu, and some element of compensation for additional hours. But bear in mind, for the last 20 years, no, my employer didn't. And so obviously it was a different employer, but technically it all counts as the same one. But previously, for 20 years, no, they didn't. And in fact, it was very much in your contract that no, you didn't. Because, as the union dude pointed out, if they are not prepared to compensate you, they are categorically saying, you're required to do a 37-hour week within normal site times. You are therefore not expected to do, ever, overtime. You can say no. You don't have to justify it. You can just go, no. And that should be the end of it. Now, we all know that if some shit's going down and you said no, your boss would be really on your butt about that. But it doesn't make it any more reasonable for them to ask you, because the truth of the matter is, they are not entitled to make you feel like you have to. If you don't want to, it is not contractually based that you have to do that. And, our lot were very ambiguous about that, because it's very much but you should want to for the love of the company. Well, yes, I should want to for the love of the company. But as the company shows no love, I have no love in return. I've been doing this a long time, and when it's not, when fair's fair, I will agree to it. Until then, no, I don't. And sorry, I need to move this pin. Actually, this one I do different. There you go. So I very understand that it puts you in an awkward position, because you've been told you've got to do 5 security shifts. Everyone else is doing 3, so already you feel slightly singled out. Yes, you will get a handful of money in your pocket, but it's like a pizza. It's not going to be buy a car money. It's buy a pizza money. And well, sometimes that's not enough. I used to be on call. So when I started streaming, I was on call. And I know I mentioned it a couple of times. I dropped out of on call, not because we weren't paid. That was not the problem. We were being paid. Not a lot, but we were being paid to be on call. But because it was just an extra thing that demanded extra thought, extra rules about what I could and couldn't do in my time. And it meant, you've got to have your work phone on, you've got to be near your laptop, you've got to be, you've got to respond within a certain time frame, you've got to this, you've got to that, realistically, not that I drink, but you can't drink, you can't go out, if I go to my friend's house, I can't do that, or arguably, while on call. And while that is not technically true, it is the practical answer, because, when I'm on call, I must be able to log in within a really short period of time. So if I've driven down to see some of my friends who are an hour's drive away, I can't do that when I'm on call, because I have to respond within a much shorter period of time than that. Of course, so then I can't go and see them during my on call. And we were week on, week off. And that week on, week off kind of rubbed a bit. And I did it for 3 or 4 years. And as I said, we were paid. It was not a lot of money, but we were paid for it. Now, I haven't seen some of my friends who live further away for quite a while. In part because I've been on call. And in part because they are busier people than me. And so their schedule and my schedule had to coincide. And because I was week on, week off, well, it was a 50-50 chance that, the day that they're free, well, I'm on call now, aren't I? And, to a large extent, this turned out to be the case. And then, of course, my car died, so, well, that ruled out some of that. And, now, I know that towards the end of last year, I was struggling a lot with a number of things in my head. And one of them, you look at your life and what's the easiest things to fix to make less stress in head. And one of the things was not being on call. So I opted out of being on call because we were allowed to do that. It was in our, in the agreement of when we all agreed to do on call, that it was a voluntary basis and that we, but that we would have a one-time opt-out opportunity. So once you've opted out, you can't opt back in. So you can't opt out during the summer when it's nice and you want to sit in the garden, and then opt back in winter when there's nothing to do. There's no jumping in and jumping out. You're either in it or you ain't, and that's it. Done. So you can opt in. I opted in. I didn't see a problem with that particularly to start with, because I did kind of assume it was going to be a bit different, to be honest. Because when, most people think of on-call, one dude is on-call. Well, if there's 6 of us, well, that's 1 week in 6. That's piss. No one said originally it was going to be week on, week off. Discovering it was week on, week off was a lot less keen. I mean, it was nice on the pocket because, week on, week off, you got extra money. So each month your salary was a bit bigger than it would have been. But it was a little bit, well, I can't do this, I can't do that. And it was every other week. And it preyed on my mind a lot that I was on call before, like many, I wouldn't push my, rather than hoping that no one was going to call and then go and see my mates far away, I would not go because, Murphy's Law applies that I would get pretty much 90% of the way there. They'd be cooking dinner for me, and pretty much I'd have to do a U-turn in their driveway and drive straight back again. And I'd feel like a shit. So I didn't really want to do that. Now, not everyone has the same level of thought, and I do know that there were people who did on-call, who didn't have their phone on, that openly admitted they didn't keep track of whether they were on call or not, so they wouldn't have been answering the phone. And you're sitting there going, if I'd done that, I'd have been caught and someone would have had a big problem with me for that. But, you got away with it. Kudos to you. But I know I couldn't, right? So I followed the rules. And I'm not the only one who did. But I also know there are more than one people who didn't. We did not get that many call-outs. I do need to point that out, which in a way made it worse. Because now you're sitting on call, not drinking, not going places, not going to the cinema, not going to restaurants, not going to visit faraway friends, not going away for the weekend, not planning anything complicated, not committing to do anything, not committing to, be anywhere. Not, you can't babysit for somebody, you can't, because, well, you just can't. And although many of those aspects are not current in my life, many of those aspects I have done. So, in fairly recent years, I have done babysitting. Now, the people I was babysitting are great, and, well, one of them's now 20-something, but at the time, so it's it's only a few years ago, they were not deemed old enough to take care of their brother, so I was there to make sure they didn't burn the house down. And they're great. I say kids because, well, even the youngest is going to be 18 this year, so let's not pretend that they're not going to be an adult this year. And their birthday's a couple of days before mine, so it's not like I forget when it is. But these two at the time kids were great kids, and I love both of them. They're really, really nice. If one of them phoned up now with a problem, I would want to help, right? But we do, and I'm going to see them on Saturday, by the way. But it is one of those things, is that when you're on call and you can't go and see your friends, you can't go and do this, you can't do that, you can't do this, the fact that those choices are taken away, and even if you wouldn't have done them necessarily, it does mean that should the idea enter your head as, hey, I actually do want to do that this weekend, you know, decorate your house, you know, whatever it is, right? Well, you can't do it that weekend now because, well, at the drop of the hat, you've got to do work things, and you can't just drop the, you know, paintbrush in the bucket and log online because, well, what if it's going to take 6 hours? All your paint will dry up, right? You know, you'd have to put it all away, it'd be half done, it's not a practical thing. So, again, there is this bit of you that kind of goes, it is quite a restrictive thing. And, you know, it's just one extra layer of stuff that I didn't need in my life, so I opted out. And this caused a bit of a kerfuffle because it turned out I was the only person, not the only person opting out. And we both, oddly enough, chose to opt out at the same time. And we both know that it was that it was assumed we'd done it to do something malicious. That we were doing it to leave people with a problem. Which is not why we were doing it, but, like everything, assumptions were made, right? And so we were made to feel very bad for thinking of ourselves and were not wanting that stress in our lives. And we were made to feel really bad for that. Which, of course, then didn't help because, well, you know, it's not that we wanted to make life worse for our co-workers, but one of the things that was thrown in our face was you can't expect people to do week on, week off on call. Well, why not? We have been. That's exactly what they expected of us. So what makes these other people so great that they can't have to do what we did? You know, didums to be them, sorry, but, you know. So I am a firm believer in things being fair. Now, we all know life is not fair, but it doesn't have to be more unfair than it has to be. You know, people do not have to go out of their way to make things harder for others. And it, you know, if you expect it of me, well, then I expect you to expect that of everyone else. Don't be singling people out for, oh, well, it's all right because, you know, I know, for example, a traditional one in an office, which many office workers I know will agree to, if you do not have kids, whether they've grown up or whether you never had them in the first place. The moment there is Christmas holidays, oh, well, you people with children first. Okay, but that doesn't mean I don't want a holiday over Christmas. And my ex-husband has had quite a few issues in this area because the staff turnover would be sufficient that every year new people would have turned up with children and he never got to have time off over Christmas. And it's, you know, it was because it was always it'll be your turn next year, but then next year someone else with children, oh, well, they need priority because they've got children. No, it's, you know, everyone. Well, funny you should say that. When the first time I did shift work after moving up here, I was working for a company who decided that we needed to introduce, you know, shift work and being in the office at the weekends and covering bank holidays. Now, we all knew that it was a pointless thing and that, you know, while there would be a few people late at night working, no one ever really, I don't think we ever did anything other than sit around and talk, to be honest. No, you know, we kept an eye on the backups, you know, but we were not there was no phones ringing, there was no urgent tickets because, well, there was like 2 whole people in the entire company working, right? It was a bit stupid. But they decided that that's what they were doing. What happened? The very, very, very first bank holiday that came up, I had to work. Oh, well, the moment I'd done mine, oh, we don't need coverage on bank holidays. We didn't get paid extra for working bank holidays. We didn't get to work shorter hours on bank holidays. We had to do a full shift on bank holidays. We had to do a full day shift because while we covered 6 in the morning till 11 at night. So there were 3 shifts. And on the weekends and bank holidays, it was the day shift, but you still had to be there. You see, we didn't. And as you can imagine, there's only a handful of bank holidays a year. But our team and I and one other was picked to cover. So the whole shift team didn't have to work. Oh, fuck off, spam bots. The whole shift team didn't have to cover the bank holiday. It was 2 of you. 2 of you had to cover the bank holiday. And, well, I found it really funny that the moment I'd done mine, along with this other dude, now, they didn't need them anymore. How convenient. So you got me and someone else to do a stint, and then suddenly decide that you don't need them again. Well, okay. See, that's not so bad. You see, part of the reason on-call was not the shiny glowing thing that it could have been was that our on-call, we got paid a small lump sum for being on-call for the week. And it was made very, very clear to us that the payment we would receive for any work we did, you would be paid by the minute. So, if you logged in and found nothing, i.e. the call was not your problem, and you logged out again, you might get 15 minutes pay at standard rate. And this is where the bias part of these things come in. So as I said, one of the biggest problems we had was that if you got a phone call in the middle of your Christmas dinner and you spent 15 minutes logging into work to go, it's not my problem, my bit's fine, all you would get was a quarter of 1 hour's pay. You didn't get double time, time and a half, nothing extra. All you got was 15 minutes pay. And, well, I'm not paid a lot, so 15 minutes pay is kind of peanuts. And same is, we were also not paid for out of hours work. So, for example, like I mentioned, there's potential work going on this weekend. No one's asked me if I want to do it. The answer is no, I don't. But no one's asked me yet. If they ask me, my employer previously does not pay. So it would be you're giving up your time at the weekend for literally nothing. Absolutely nothing. Not a pay, not time off in lieu. Literally nothing. Well, I'm sorry. You pay me X quid a year for 37 hours a week. Once I have done those 37 hours weeks, you have used up your quota for the week. If you want more quota, I am available for, for an additional fee. Oh, no, madam. Oh, no. You must want to do it for the love. No, I don't. And if you're not going to pay me, well, I don't feel obliged to do it. And legally, they kind of can't make you. But they can strongly infer that it is in your interest to do it. For it is in the interest of the company, and without this, the company will go down, and then you won't have a job, and they'll put all of the pressure on you to do it for nothing. And I'm not saying that those words were ever said, but there is that kind of intimation in a lot of the things that go on. And I'm really pleased for you that you do get paid, and by the sounds of it, fairly reasonably. I'm not going to say it's great, but it's not horrendous, right? It's not like me where they wouldn't have paid you at all, right? Now, it does great, like you've said, is where every public holiday for 15 years, you have had to work. And maybe other people in the team haven't done a single one. And you're kind of going, I don't mind doing a reasonable share, but this, my dude, is not a reasonable share. And, this is kind of how mine turned out, was that, oh, well, we need you to do one because you'll all work bank holiday, because there were enough teams that we could all work a bank holiday. But of course, they then canned it the moment we'd done ours. And and do you know why they canned it? Because everyone else demanded better pay and better conditions. Well, we'd tried, and they said they'd sort it out afterwards. Now, yes, we were stupid, but we also couldn't refuse. Because the contract of our job actually said you'll be required to work at least one bank holiday a year. So we couldn't refuse. Now, if we had refused to go shift, we would have lost our jobs because, as part of UK employment rules, if they notify you of changes to your position and you disagree, you're entitled to disagree. But if you do not agree to them, you are therefore resigning. I need to sort out why this bobbin is a complete disaster. And so we'd had to agree to it, or we were jobless. So we were kind of over a barrel, really. Well, that's a good thing. That's at least worth it, right? I will say to you, when I did that bank holiday all those years ago, there was no one there. It was a complete waste of our lives. Absolutely and 100% complete waste of our lives. There was no one in, other than the security guard who sat on reception and us, like a bunch of lemmings. It was stupid. But that's what the company had decreed. They had said they needed IT to do a shift during the day so that people could work, and well, that's what our job now entailed. They then, of course, cut it, as I said, but that was how it worked. Did it make it right? No. But that's how it kind of turned out. So I do have resentment to shift work. I worked shifts a few times, as I said, and I can't say I enjoyed shift work. I will say that when I did the first time I did shift work, well, I got employed for a job that was shift work, who 1 week before the start date canned the whole thing and literally closed the office. That was a bit annoying. But the first time I had a job that was shift work, I was on my own. Now, all the rules in the UK about lone working and all that kind of shit were not really adhered or created back in the day. So in the late 80s, early 90s, I was a lone person of 20 working in an office by myself. Lots of things could have gone wrong, and one day it was brought really, really home to me when I fell down the stairs. Another time, there was a horrendous crash. And now, the week before, someone had raided the 7-Eleven on the high street round the corner. Well, it was kind of opposite the office, but to get there you had to go around the corner. They'd raided it, and okay, you see, that's a reasonable deal, right? And so, while it's still, time that you've got to be working that maybe you don't want to, but it is at least a reasonable compensation for what you're doing, right? As I said, ours was not quite so reasonable, and that was more of the problem. But, like I said, if they're planning on making me work this weekend, well, they need to have asked before tomorrow, really, in my mind. And that's something that this lot seem to be really good at doing, is waiting till the Thursday before and going, well, you are available this weekend, and expecting you to say, well, of course. Well, you never mentioned needing my help before Thursday afternoon. And like this weekend, I've made arrangements to go and have tea with some friends. I know it's a bit rare that I'm going out, but I am going out. I'm not going hugely far, but that's not the point. Well, then no, I'm not available to work necessarily on Saturday. Or maybe I'd be hungover on Sunday. I don't drink, but that's not the point. There is the assumption that don't wait till Thursday, because even I made plans this week for the weekend. I mean, it's rare, but people do. You make, there might be a wedding you're going to. You can't just wait till the Thursday night and go, or worse, Friday morning and go, because bear in mind, sometimes our work starts on a Friday lunchtime because we only work 5 hours on a Friday. So technically after 6 hours, they can start doing the upgrades and all the rest of it. Well, but that doesn't mean I'm available Friday afternoon. For my Friday afternoons are mine to command with what I wish. I've got plans. I book doctor's appointments and things in it because, well, they're open and, all of those kind of things, hospital appointments and anything else, rather than taking time off work, I do them on a Friday afternoon. Well, and as you know, obviously I should do my late streams now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, no, I'm not necessarily free to do some shit for you on a Friday afternoon. And they look at you like, well, why not? Because it's my time and I've decided I'm doing something with it. It's, we get this quite a lot, and I think it's one of the few things that has sunk in with the change of employer, is how much previously was being done, let's call it off the books. Not, it was not paid for, it was not a recognised part of your contract, but at the same time, it was mandatory. And, well, we didn't get the thanks for it, we didn't get the money for it, we basically got nothing for it, other than loss of personal time. And like you say, after so many years, you do get a little bit bored of it. And as I say, 20 years in, I got bored of it. So I was, are you available? No. What you doing? Does it matter? I don't have to agree to do it, so no. Oh, but we really need you. Well, then you should have asked me before today, shouldn't you? And maybe I would have accommodated it. But you don't wait till the night before and say, can you give up your weekend, you know? What's with all the planes? Hang on. That was an Airbus A400 flying at... Oh, it's going up. So it was at about 2,300 feet. Sounded a lot lower than that. But more interestingly, if I zoom out and look at its flight path, it took off from Bryce Norton. It flew down and around... What's down there? Oh, around Shaftesbury. There's a shark. And then came back. Flew a bit into Wales, threw up round the top of Wales, and is now heading back to Bryce Norton. Maybe, possibly. I do hate it when they do some of these trips because they fly so low and it's like you're just doing a test flight. You could at least do it a bit higher and out the way. We do occasionally get low-flying planes here. And I don't mind an occasional one. I mind more at night. Well, just because it's, you know, when I'm working, it's not really disturbing a me time thing. But when it's disturbing my time, well, I mind a bit more. Yeah. But it was really weird the other day. I was outside talking to the garden dude, and there were loads of commercial flights, so not the military, but commercial normal flights, and they were flying so low that without a pair of binoculars I could read the call signs, and as a result of that, it was really weird because in the space of a few minutes. In the space of a few minutes, we had 8 or 9 planes, really, really low. And they were heading west, so it was not like they were taking off. And it was kind of like everyone had, it was almost like the 9/11 call to arms, everybody land kind of scenario. For which I did check, there wasn't one. But it really felt like that because all of these planes were flying so low, and normally you don't see hide nor hair of the commercial ones. They're the ones that look like a small ant at the top of the sky, right? Whereas, as I say, these were so low I could read the call signs without binoculars. And with my shocking eyesight, that's low, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. I need one more. Let me get... So yeah, Um, running out of drink again. What time is it? Oh, 9 o'clock. So, going forward, as mentioned earlier in stream, I am going to finish this square, finish other square, next square, and make a curtain out of the 9 squares. And we will abandon the square making. I will try and update said picture at some point to not show 18 squares as a result. And we will go for making of strips. For the strips, definitely are a bit of a winner. But I also need to define said strips. And I need to do some testings as to what I actually want in my strip. Now, why are you looking a bit weird? There you go. As we discussed yesterday, do I do big, small, big, small? Do I, spread them out a bit more? Do I want to keep it as busy as it is? There are questions, right? And I am a little concerned that if I keep the level of pattern that I've currently got in my strip, it is a bit busy. But at the same time, is it really a problem that it's busy? I do know that if I made the strips as it stands, I would not hate it. But could it be better? Probably. And, this was kind of the theory when we started the squares, was that we knew that, for example, the squares would show, but this was our best course of option at the time. We have since then done some work and found a better way. Thus suggesting skip to new project. Now, as I said, it does mean that obviously I kind of feel obliged to do something with the squares that we've done, and making half a curtain is definitely that thing. For it should be a curtain, I wanted to make a curtain, I will make a curtain. Now, if I change to making strips, I also have a potential to change the window that I'm making the strip for. For example, well, and that's the other thing with the square, certainly making the other half of a full curtain in squares, I can add to it at any point. With the strips, you would end up with the join in the middle and it would look a bit weird. But with the squares, because they naturally have join points anyway, I could, as Nautica has beautifully suggested, come back to it when I'm less sick of doing squares, or triangles more accurately, and decide to make some more, make it longer, maybe finish it, make it a 3/4 window, who knows, right? So there is always room to return to it. Whereas the strips thing, you would need to make the full length in one go, because the whole point is making strips. Yeah, 4/6, 5/6, maybe it'll grow over a long period of time. But for example, I could make curtain for my patio doors. Now I would make 2 individual ones, so I only have to kind of cover the glassy bit. But I could arguably make the strips that long that I cover the patio doors. Don't think I will, but I could. So there are lots of decisions to make, and that need to be made kind of before I start, really. It is good to have a plan. I mean, even if it is a bit of a vague plan, because as we know, when we started out with the squares, there were decisions that we could make later. And well, this was one of them. I could stop halfway and give it give up. And which, I'm not giving up, I am changing tack. Now, unfortunately, it does mean starting again, obviously. But, it's, I would have completed a valid piece of curtain. So I don't know. I have to make a lot of decisions, and so I need to do some more testing strips. Have fun. And I've just heard that Twitch has just shown erectile dysfunction ads to people. That is so wholly inappropriate, Twitch. That's terrible. That is utterly terrible. I mean, if you're a sufferer, you have my sympathies. But to be, for a platform where you could be broadcasting to minors, that seems very inappropriate. I mean, so is my language, but, slightly less bad, Chances are they've heard all of that before, but can't say I overly approve of that one, Twitch. That one seems a bit rough, 2, 4, 5. So, I'm going to cease for the day. I'm going to take a photo, because I forgot to take a photo when we started, but I'm going to take a photo. Taking of photo, as in time-honoured tradition. There we go. So yes, I will be back tomorrow evening. I must go out and put the bins out before it's too late and I disturb the entire universe by doing so. We have a lot of speculating to do, my friends, about these strips as to what they are. Because, of course, we could arguably do... so we've worked out that the same, roughly the strip... So just to recap, to give you something to think about, we've worked out that at the size of strip that we've done, which is as many bobbins as this, you need 7 strips. So we could do 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So, sorry, 1, 2, or sorry, 3, 2, 1, a centre strip, 1, 2, 3. So you could have a reflection so that they, you know, or you can do like a B, A, B, A, B, A. Or all 7 are different. I think all 7 were different would look a little odd. But certainly those two, A, B, A, B, A, B, A, kind of, you know, because of course A's would end up on the outside, so they're reversible. Similarly with the 3, 2, 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, you'd have a single one in the middle that could be different somehow. But I need to plan and work out what the plan is. Because part of me wants to do a picture, but a picture is just not really a good plan. A picture is not a good plan. Because I can't draw, and I've got to join it all together, and that would make it awkward. And yeah, that would be a difficult thing. So, we're not doing pictures, even though I really want to do pictures. We're not doing pictures. If my marbles had survived the other Testy Strip 2 variety, pictures would may have been a little bit more in, because that star lace does lend itself to pictures better. And potentially you could do stuff to kind of make it work. But I'm not unhappy with my thoughts. I'm happy with the idea of doing my strips at this time. I have started a third strip to see if I can improve the join. But I do need to do some testing, and so there will be some randomness on it. But with the strip printout that I've done and the lack of holes in certain places, I am somewhat limited as to some of the things that I can do at those points. But we shall see. We shall see. We shall try and see if we can, you know, sort it all out and make a good thing. But I will be back tomorrow. We will be doing more triangle. And we can talk more about anything you like, as we do. But also speculate more on the strips and the plans and life in general. So I hope I will see you here. For those who have been with me today, thank you very much. I appreciate you all. Even though Nauticelt, of course, runs the shops, I appreciate Nauticelt too. Thank you for coming. Let me quickly check and see if there is someone to give you to. Let me just quickly see if there is a raid that I should be doing. I doubt it. Let's see who we've got. Zukun's doing that. The Monsters Memory guys are out. No, there's no crafty people to send you to. So I shall leave you, and I shall see you tomorrow. Bye bye.